Hello and welcome. This is AlchemistExe. So this week for banners, there's really not much to talk about. There'll be a little bit that I'll go over at the end of the video, but that's going to be a small portion of it. I do want to talk about some Genesis related stuff. First and foremost, Mira Nyx and Inaku have some updates. They're pretty nice. The most noteworthy one for me is Nyx with his removal of cast time on his Quicken and an extra strong defense versus human down on his debuff, which is already one of his best moves anyway. And then the three of them, they've got things like range extension, stat boosts. Inaku's got an infinite use move now. So overall, you could definitely see a lot of improvement in the three of them. They're already good units to have, and now they're even better. And then there's also farming quests for their enlightenment shards rather than regular shards, but you can still get quite a few of them. Especially the milestones will get you shards for the three of them, and then you can also randomly do it 3 times per day and you'll get 10 shards of a random any Genesis character. It doesn't have to be a protagonist. As long as they're a character associated with Genesis, you can potentially get enlightenment shards of them. So I think it's very nice. It's running for a few weeks, so I'll talk about that more. But first, I want to talk about something that was requested, and that is going to be the overcoming the language barrier in a sense. Because I've been doing this for a little while. I do understand a little bit of Japanese, and that is somewhat important, but I don't understand a lot. I took like 4 years of it a long time ago, and it didn't really keep it up, so I only got so far with it. I did learn the basic alphabet, which I'll talk a bit more about it later. But overall, I mostly rely on translation. So I'll talk about the different types of translation stuff that I use. And then after that, I'll talk a little bit more about the language itself and how it applies to learning to understand the UI of the game. Just especially in the case of somebody who is looking at wanting to play a lot of Japanese games in the long run. Because I think I wouldn't recommend doing it just for TAGA because we're looking at it like it's on borrowed time. So if you spent like a few weeks or a couple months learning a specific set of Japanese characters only to have the game announce EOS, I wouldn't feel very good. But if it's something you were going to do anyway and you've got other Japanese games you play, it could definitely be worth your time, because as far as the hiragana and katakana alphabets go, learning them would not take very long, and then you could understand like stuff like characters' names and certain things. Like some words are just written in katakana, like, for example, damage, or anytime it's something that is very context specific, you'll see that. And then there might also be some kanji characters that you would want to learn if it's helpful for the game, like elemental, like fire, water, wind, etc. Something like that could definitely be worthwhile, but it's more about understanding the pictograms in those cases, and you don't necessarily even need to know what hiragana are used to make up the kanji. So next up, I'm going to showcase it's going to mostly be, rather than be video footage, just a series of different screen caps while I talk about how they are relevant. Okay, so let's start with the simplest thing, and that is going to be the browser translation stuff. So right now I've got a screen cap of the translated Alchemist code database on the Pride Rune page, which you'll find under the Tools tab. So that's pretty easy. Anything that involves the Alchemist code database, if you don't really need it, but if you care to look at the Twitter for FGG, for Tagatame, you translate that in the browser. And then, of course, the news site. Now, the news site is going to be the same as in-game overall, but for certain things that have really long blocks of text, like, say, a producer's letter, I always do that in the browser. And, as usual, there will be links to all of the sites that I use in the description of the video, just in case you need to check it out for yourself. So one thing I did want to point out, though, is because Pride Rune is a lot of things, and luckily there is a translation of it, but you do want to make sure that you're looking at it at the right way. Some of it you might be very, very easy just because of, muscle memory as far as the game goes, and the iconography, like recognizing, oh, that's a symbol for P attack, that's a symbol for M attack, etc. But basically, if you're looking at the flowchart on the database, the stuff on the leftmost is going to correspond to the top. And then I have noticed a couple of instances where the thing, like especially for the star things, when there's 3 options for the stars, I think this might have just been a formatting mistake on the database, but it's one in particular where the elemental ones, they had like dark and water switched. But other than that, it's been very, very accurate. So that's just something to watch out for. So if you just remember that like left is equal to up, then you're golden, and you can just follow along the flowchart as you level up your pride rune. It's just one single page, so you can just keep scrolling down. It makes it pretty easy to use. Now, when it comes to images that you want to translate and a text translator is not going to work, I'll show you how I deal with that. Okay, and then here is a screen cap of a translated image. Now, typically I do this on my phone. So for browser stuff, I do that on my desktop. Usually when I'm in an instance where I'm very invested on what the translation are, I'm usually at my desktop holding my phone so I can do one or the other. Now, the necessity of translating images is typically going to be a lot lower than text because most of the important info gets distributed in text, at least eventually. Like, for example, everything related to Kamui here is also on the Alchemist Code database and somewhat easier to read. But every once in a while, there might need to be an image that you want to translate, maybe something about a banner in the news section. So in that case, I just go to the in-game news, take a screen cap of the image, and then throw it into Google Translate via that way. There are browser ones, but they're very, very hit and miss. Like, this is already pretty hit and miss as far as some of the translation choices, but at the very least, you can usually get the gist of it. So now you may be wondering why I don't use a on-screen translator, because they do have those. There are like dynamic translators to have. All the ones that I've tried, because I don't want to pay a subscription for something like that when I've already got a method that works well enough. And it's either you've got to pay to use it, or it's really, really bad when it comes to ads, and that's if it works out really well. I did try it because I wanted to try translating the story as it was going on, but it just didn't end up working out. I was like, it doesn't matter if you are invested in the story, you can find translations of them on the main Alchemist Code wiki. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to come out, but usually it's pretty fast. I started reading the translations for Chapter 8, which I just started doing, and that's been, it's pretty nice. You can either have your phone right in front of your desktop and kind of go at the same time, or what I like to do is do about one act's worth, like do 10 stages in a row, and just kind of see what I can infer based on what's happening in the game. And then after I've done those 10 stages, then I read the translation of all of those, because it feels too blocky to do it like one stage, one translation. But like for me, 10 is just about the sweet spot where I still remember everything that happened, and then I can look at it more comprehensively as an act. Anyway, with that out of the way, the next thing I want to talk about is the Japanese language itself. And then if you're interested in learning more about that, how you can apply that to functioning better with in-game menus, etc. So we are now looking at a Japanese language chart. The hiragana and katakana alphabets are at the top, and the bottom is the kanji. Not really worried about the kanji. And I just want to say thank you to Danny Linky from Learn Japanese is where I got this chart from. Might be a good Reddit to go onto if that is something you're interested in. So if you are interested in learning enough Japanese characters to be able to navigate through menus a bit easier, then the hiragana and katakana alphabets are going to be the most important thing to learn. Because that's going to, especially weirdly, hiragana is like the heart of the language, but katakana is actually going to be the most important one, because all of the terms that you're going to want to be able to know, like characters' names especially, or just certain other things like say damage or something like up or something down. Like for example, clock up and clock down are written as that rather than using the actual time related native Japanese words. They just write it as if it was English and then just put into the katakana. And that's pretty much what katakana is usually used for. You could kind of look at it because they all have the same phonetic function. It's just one is kind of like caps lock of the others. So in a game like Tagatame, all the characters' names are written in katakana, and then certain just specific terms like maybe item or like damage. So that's going to be very, very important. And then with kanji, it's learning to recognize what the character is and learning how to say it is actually not really going to be important. If you're just trying to understand what is physical attack, physical defense, magic attack, etc., then it's really just pictograms at that point. So speaking of, I want to take a look at the in-game menu and I'll showcase like what I mean by pictograms. Okay, so now here is a cropped image of the status screen. It's Ouroboros if you're curious which unit these are the stats from. So what I did was I underlined the matching kanjis in cases where it was relevant to just showcase that when it comes to like the hiragana and the katakana stuff I was talking about, that's like really using the more language-oriented part of your brain. You'd be learning a new alphabet, and then if you're taking characters' names and putting that together, that's like the language/reading part of your brain that you're using. Like you want to recognize Reido's name, for example, find the character Reido, for example. This, however, is a different part of your brain. This is just purely image-based, like pattern recognition type of stuff, because in the case of understanding the status screen, you don't actually need to know how to even say these characters. Like for physical attack, physical defense, etc. It's more just understanding what the picture looks like. And to make the process even easier, each one of the stats already has just a regular pictogram associated with it, trying to help that process, like if you're working on runes, etc. So the main example, like what really got me on this when I was first started playing the Japanese version, was crit runes were very, very valuable to me, but P defense runes not so much, unless I'm raising a P defense character. So one of the first sets of characters I learned was the characters for crit as a stat. So that way, when I got the rune that's either P defense or crit, I could recognize right away if it was crit just by looking at the substats of the main stat of the rune. And so that's something that even if you're not interested in learning a ton of Japanese, understanding these characters is just very, very helpful for navigating the game. And then a few others that I might recommend would be the elements like fire, water, wind, because they always use the same kanji every time for that. The pride rune can actually, if you do enough pride runes and you have the table on the database while you're working on the pride runes, that'll actually teach you a bunch of other ones too. I ended up learning charm because of the Osmodeus boss that's currently available and the necessity of having my Nyx have charm resistance. So that's just an example of how that can be applied. So I am done with language stuff for now. And so let's go ahead and jump into the Genesis farming boss levels, because I have a little bit to say about that before moving on to the banners. Okay, so these are the quests in question. Basically, Osmodeus and Mammon boss fights that are functionally the same as their Genesis boss equivalents, except there's no turn limit. Just they have way, way more HP, and at least in the case of Osmodeus, are a lot more capable of killing you. The main thing that is going to hurt in that is just AI stupidity. So start with Mammon. Pretty easy by comparison. I did not really have to do or think much. I just threw Orion, Iniku, and Meifang at the problem, and they were able to get the job done easily. Because as far as greed goes, Thunder and Slash, pretty much set with those three. A lot of people are going to have Orion too, just because they did offer a bundle for him for 2,500 gems. When it came out, I definitely recommended anybody who didn't have him maxed out to get it. So he was pretty much a one-way ticket to victory there. In the case of Osmodeus, it's not as simple. There really isn't a one-way ticket in the same way. There are many solutions. Lustberg trio like Pamela, Noah, Emma. Some people have soloed it with Yaris. I don't have Yaris Link's Memento, so that wasn't really an option for me. I felt like looking at the clear data and just the way that my units are raised, I felt like I was about 80% of the way to being comparable to most of the clears on here. Well, assuming that I have the units in question, but just not quite there in terms of stuff like runes and level of investment. So I ended up kind of compromising. And just my Otama is my strongest magic unit. Actually, maybe Nyx is my strongest magic unit now that I have all of his gates maxed. So I was just sitting on a mountain of Lustberg reliefs. So I just went ahead and maxed out the Mirror Swimsuit one, which I'd already pulled multiple times. So I only had to give up like 2 reliefs extra for that. And then It gets a really good leader skill. I brought Ravenna along because one of the main struggles that you're going to find in this map is how dumb the AI is, and they'll get inside of Asmodeus's counter range and functionally kill themselves unless they're really good at dodging, or if you're just straight up have really, really high stats like Nyx does. So Ravenna was able to keep herself out of danger. So that was what I went with, but absolutely worth your time because the Enlightenment shards that you'll get, it totals out to quite a bit for how long the quest is running, and hopefully you'll be lucky and you'll get characters that you want to be able to raise. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about that. So now let's do the last segment of the video and jump into the banners. And here we are at the banners. So we got the vouchers. I don't really think that anything has really changed. I think that it's an obsolete banner style. Like, it's not the worst thing ever. Getting guaranteed either 5 stars or units or mementos, and then a currency you can use to buy something else is good idea, but in practice, it's just the scarcity is all wrong. You know, there's a chance you could get some pretty good stuff, but it's usually a case of like, are you saving for something else, or there's always competition for your gems, and I just don't think that the vouchers themselves provide enough value, just because everything that you can get either, you know, by farming or some other way. Now, on the other hand, there's a coin banner for all Genesis units, pickup banner style, and then of course their mementos. Now, the odds of you needing this is going to be lower after everything that we've been through with all the free summons and stuff, but this is definitely, I think this is more designed with getting these characters to higher levels of investment. So you're really thinking in terms of those duplicates being 100 shards and then getting coins to buy more shards of them. It's a little bit undercut by the fact that we're getting a lot of free Enlightenment shards for these characters. However, it is totally RNG what you're getting from those maps. So you might be in a position where you've got somebody you're working on, like say maybe you're really close to getting Nyx's Gate 5. Nyx's Gate 5 is really, really good. So say that's what you're going to do with the coins, right? You use the 200 coins, that'll get you enough shards to get Nyx's Gate 5. Maybe you'll get some other really good stuff along the way from the pickup banner, and you're using a discount ticket to do it. That's good value. So I can't say that they're bad banners. It's just some people are going to be cleaned out from the anniversary. Other people are cleaned out from Kamui. So the timing is not great, but the structure itself could be a lot worse. And it is 5% rate up. So that is definitely better. With the memento, it's a little bit less value just because, as usual, with that type of coin banner, you need to go all in order to get the value out of the coins. But if there's any mementos you're missing from these, like Andrix's second, the Mirror Nyx second memento, for example, it's still a decent way to try and get that if you're very, very adamant about doing that. But then other than that, there really isn't much else aside from the Kamui and Edgar stuff is around for a little bit, but TAGA Pay's gone, so the value is gone with it. So yeah, that is all I've got for now. So hopefully if you have been struggling with the language barrier, you found the beginning of this video helpful. And if you are summoning, I wish you good luck, and I will see you all next time.